Okay, Carlos.
Yes, Trevor.
Many thanks for seeing me again.
My pleasure.
Just to finalise our earlier discussions from this morning, where I said I needed to explore further the things that we discussed and gather some more evidence where I had some areas of concern.
Yes.
So, firstly, the scope issue, where the activities of your Chinese operation are not included in your management system. Yeah. Remember, we talked about the requirement to take into account the work-related activities
Yes.
performed, and that these cannot be simply rejected.
I remember.
Well, you're outsourcing part of that function or process to contractors in China.
Yes, we are.
I spoke to Godo and he confirmed that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
And this relates to cabling installation. Yeah?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
Beijing and Hong Kong,
Okay.
yes.
So the standard states that whilst the outsourced organisation is outside the scope of the management system, the actual functional process is within the scope, and that cannot be excluded, I'm afraid.
So what does that mean?
Well, it means a major non-conformity against clause 4.3 of the standard.
A major non-conformity.
It does, I'm afraid.
Clause, what was the clause on
Clause 4.3.
that? Okay.
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 And if you remember, I mentioned about the annex that clarifies that issue. Perhaps you need to look at that.
Okay.
So effectively, unfortunately, as I said, it means that your management system's not credible. Not as far as 45,001 is concerned, anyway.
So we have to include everything then?
You have to include China in this case because it's an outsourced function, and an outsourced function is within the scope of the management standard per the definitions.
So if we just use contractors, we wouldn't have a problem. But because it's deemed as an outsourced function, is that what you're saying?
Well, you are using contractors, but it is an outsourced function, therefore it's within the scope.
Okay. And why is that difference in 9 and 14?
It isn't.
Well, we have exclusions on 9 and 14 on that, so why is that different?
Well, that's wrong. You must have just had a bad auditor.
Well, it is one of your company's auditors.
Really?
Yes.
That's concerning. I'll make sure that's followed up as well.
Can you please? Because
I will.
that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll have to get back to you about that and review those scopes.
Yes, please.
Okay, secondly, your leadership and commitment regarding active participation is also a problem, I'm afraid.
Right. And how is that?
Well, obviously there was no involvement, again, from our discussions this morning, and also with the workers' representative that I spoke to. There was no involvement of workers in the decision to exclude the Chinese activities in the scope.
Right.
In other words, there was no active worker participation in the management system in this area.
So is that another non-conformity?
Not yet. However, there were other concerns relating to this. So in relation to the identification and removal of obstacles or barriers to participation, for example. Okay. Particularly around workers not suggesting anything that's going to cost the organisation money.
Really? That's what they said to you?
That's what I was told by more than one person.
Okay.
Apparently, they normally get rejected or usually ignored. And the risk assessments, where the workers were unable to comment because an external consultant was appointed.
Okay. Who's telling you this? Is this the workers' representative?
Amongst others.
Okay.
So, taken together, unfortunately, I'm raising that as a second major non-conformity. on a lack of leadership and commitment with respect to participation and consultation.
That's my leadership and commitment, or the company's?
I'm afraid it's your leadership and commitment.
My personal leadership and commitment. So you're raising a non-conformity on me.
You're top management in the standard. Yeah. It says it here, you see.
So that audit report...
That's 5.1E.
Okay.
Okay. Top management must ensure active worker participation.
So you're going to tell the workers that my leadership and commitment is inadequate in this company?
No, I'm not going to tell the workers that. I'm going to write that in the report.
Which is shared through the participation and consultation requirements in 45,000 to the workers. And you're happy to do that?
Well,
okay.
Well, clearly you don't do that anyway. So what you do with your report is up to you.
Okay.
Now then, on this subject of developing, leading and promoting a culture in the organisation that supports the management system, I've got a few problems there as well.
Right, okay.
For example, there's a lot of evidence, and again, speaking with you and other people, that it seems that you consider involvement to be telling workers what's going to happen.
Yes, it is, yes.
You've made the decisions and you tell them, whereas the standard is requiring their involvement in the decision-making processes.
Okay.
So there's little in the way of encouraging them to participate.
Okay, I'm not sure what else we can do, but okay.
Well, I mean, you know, I just give you some examples here, because I wouldn't raise this lightly. Okay. For example, there were 3 workers' representatives.
Yes.
Yeah. There's only 1 now. The other 2 decided not to continue anymore because they were not given the time to fulfil their role.
Well, that's not entirely correct. I mean, there were personal problems with them as well, and one of them's left anyway, so it's not entirely correct.
Well, you know, at least 2 different people told me that. And also workers think that you just want to know who's not wearing PPE.
Well, I do.
And who's removing themselves from perceived dangers. And you don't really care about the workers in China because you've not included them in your scope.
Well, I think that's a little bit unfair.
Well, this is the evidence that I've gathered through talking to different people. Also, by your own admission, you only attend the monthly Health and Safety Committee meetings occasionally.
Well, I am the managing director, so I can't attend every session.
Well, again, you know, the standard requires that you demonstrate the leadership and commitment.
Well, it's top management. The operations director is there. Operations director is top management. Why is it all about me as the managing director?
Because you are part of top management. You, again, in the definition, you are the person that leads the organisation.
So are you saying that all top managers have to attend that health and safety committee?
No, but I'm saying it can't just be by one person. Obviously, if you're involving them. So, again, unfortunately, I'm raising that as a major non-conformity.
Another major?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. There's clear evidence that workers are not involved in the decision-making processes relating to the management system.
Okay, I don't know what to say, really.
Well, you know, this is 5.1K in the standard, where you're not promoting a culture that supports the management system.
Okay, I think I'm in need of a strong coffee. Would you kindly excuse me, please?
Of course. Any chance of I need one too, really. Any chance of I could do with a double espresso?